Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dahawa Ahmed Omer, and I'm the Executive Director of the BlackNorth Initiative. Welcome to the BlackNorth Talks series. I'm truly honored to welcome you to the second year of the BlackNorth Talks series, and I'll begin by acknowledging the land which I'm on, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. To all of our attendees, from my esteemed guests, our fellow signatories, our government officials, and our allies, on behalf of the BlackNorth Initiative, happy Black History Month, and welcome to the BlackNorth Talks, Part 1 with Shaka Senghor. It was just 20 months ago when we launched the BlackNorth Initiative, and since then, it has become a strong and powerful voice in not only eradication of systemic anti-Black racism, but also in the empowerment of Black communities throughout Canada. We have worked very closely with leaders over 500 Canadian organizations, totaling $1.3 trillion in value, including both public and private sector, major banks, insurance companies, law firms, government sectors, and the largest asset managers and institutional investors. All of them are behind us. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your continued efforts in eradicating systemic anti-Black racism from our society. As we continue on this journey to true equity, we must be steadfast in the fight against all forms of racism. The work that we've embarked on has created such an incredible momentum and impact. Thank you for being part of this journey. The BlackNorth Talk is an opportunity to mark Black History Month and to celebrate the contributions, heritages, and victories of Black Canadians. The BlackNorth Talk series will inspire you, motivate you, and move you. Just some housekeeping items for now. We will have an opportunity for you to ask some questions at the end of our session today. I would ask that you use the Q&A function to ask any questions that you may have. Now, today we have an incredible host that we were honored to have last year, Hamid Mubarak, AKA Pen Moodz, who is a lawyer, a good friend of mine. He is young, Black, and gifted, and he will be the one leading us through the conversation today. So when Hamid is not negotiating contracts, he's setting his pen on fire whenever the mood strikes. He's an advocate of truth, defender of justice, a storyteller in his communities. Pen Moodz have performed for the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, the President of Raptors, Masai Ujiri, the Mayor of Toronto, John Tory, and many, many others. In addition, Hamid has launched campaigns supported by the Los Angeles Lakers in 2020 NBA Finals, and he was featured in Complex, Sportsnet, and many more. Hamid's captivating energy has gained him audiences as a public speaker with American Express, the City of Toronto, QP Local, the York Region District School Board, and Canada's Elite Development League, just to name a few. Above all, he enjoys connecting with students and inspiring the next generation to pick up the pen to express themselves. I'd like the opportunity to introduce the people's poet, Hamid.
Thank you so much, Dahabo, for the lovely introduction. Given how you've invited a poet to the stage, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Mood, but I'm really Pen Moodz, and I'll continue to pen moods for as long as my pen moves, until my pen proves that I'm really pen proof. Now listen and observe as we carve every word and etch our feelings and emotions into every groove. Some sharp, jagged, hollow, some smooth, painting pictures of allegories of different categories that we elude. Your journey with the BlackNorth and Shaka Senghor is only beginning, and his words of truth and vulnerability to be continued. Now, everyone, welcome to the first of 3 BlackNorth Talks, a series of deep conversations about authenticity as it relates to representation, identity, and diversity. Today's discussion will be on the power of transformation through the journey of our guest speaker, whom we're so lucky to have, Shaka Senghor. Shaka is the head of diversity, equality, and inclusion at Trip Actions. He is the president of Shaka Senghor, Inc. and founder of Redeem Soul. His memoir, Writing My Wrongs, Life, Death, and Redemption in an American Prison, debuted in the New York Times and the Washington Post bestseller lists. Shaka's widely anticipated sophomore book, Letters to the Sons of Society, was released just last month in January. This book invites men on a journey of honesty and healing through a collection of beautifully written letters to Shaka's sons, Jay and Sekou. Throughout the book, Shaka traces his journey as a Black man in America and unpacks the toxic and misguided messages about masculinity, mental health, love, and success that boys learn from an early age. It serves as a soulful examination of the bond between fathers and sons, and a touchstone for anyone seeking a kinder and a more just world. Shaka is a former MIT Media Lab Director's Fellow and former fellow in the inaugural class of the WK Kellogg Foundation's Community Leadership Network. His 2014 TED Talk was featured in their Year in Ideas Roundup and has over 1.7 million views. In 2021, he was also featured in hip hop legend, let me say that again, hip hop legend Nas, his track Composure, in the second installment of his King's Disease album series. If we were in front of everybody in public, I would say round of applause, but do it anyways. Shaka is also the recipient of numerous awards, including the 2012 Black Male Engagement Leadership Award, the Manchester University Innovator of the Year Award, the 2016 Ford Man of Courage Award, and the 2016 NAACP Great Expectations Award. He was recognized by the Oprah Winfrey Network as a soul igniter in the inaugural class of the Super Soul 100. He is taught at the University of Michigan and shares his story of redemption around the world. Today, Shaka's priority is shifting societal narratives through storytelling and developing workshops with high entertainment value and deep social impact.
So many brilliant Black poets, authors, and philosophers. And then I had the great fortune of encountering Malcolm X's autobiography. And it shattered every stereotype I had about myself. Who have made a poor decision and who can now move on with their life.
Yeah.
And I know that people think I'm an anomaly. I don't personally think that, because I see men and women who have transformed their lives. They just haven't figured out how do they re-emerge in society, you know, which is the case for a lot of guys in the streets. And that's where you see that toughness, that hard shell. It's a mask, you know, it masks the fear that you can die in any given moment. As a father and as a man, I knew that I had to do something different. And so I read that letter and I read it, and all of the street toughness, all the prison yard toughness, like all that garbage started going away. Every week, coming back to society, and a lot of times they don't have the things in place that they need to, you know, sustain their lives out here. And so, you know, this is one of the things that we feel the show is really going to help people see is like, what are those processes that would be helpful, and what are some of the things that stand as an impediment to people successfully transition?
And now welcome Shaka to BlackNorth Talks. And it is my utmost pleasure to be your host and to have you here today with us. Welcome.
Truly an honor to be here, and thank you all for hosting me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation today.
Amazing, amazing. To kick things off, I'd like to share a story with everyone of our first interaction, Shaka. Just last week when we met on our check, you complimented my background of books. And you asked me that you hoped to see your book up here with them. So Shaka, I got your book, and I promise it's going to go on that shelf, but only after I finish my final notes on it. And when I did pick up this book, Shaka, I read it cover to cover, you know, and I can promise that it will live here. And for everyone who's listening today, I would describe this as essential reading.
I agree. I think everybody should read it for sure. Super proud of this body of work, and you know, the effort to tell these important stories and the process to get them out. So really excited to get into the hands of the audience for sure.
Amazing, man. And going through this as a fellow wordsmith, when I was reading your book, I was just blown away by the care and the thought that you put into it. From the title of your book, Letters to the Sons of Society, to the opening Khalil Gibran quote, which if I may read for the audience. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, they belong not to you. Why did you decide to lead with this quote?
Yeah, I think it's one of, first of all, Khalil Gibran is one of my favorite writers, and that quote comes from his book, The Prophet. It's just beautiful, beautiful articulation of our experiences with love, with raising children. And it just really made me think about the idea of ownership and what we're constantly talking about as it relates to human beings. We're like my son, my daughter, and there is some ownership element to that because ultimately we're responsible for raising our children. But on a deeper level, I believe that our children come to the universe with all the things, complete, they're whole human beings. And our responsibility is to just move out of their way, put enough structure around them to learn the basic fundamentals, and then let that magic that's already embedded in them manifest the way that it's intended without our egos attached. I grew up in a community where so much of our identity is shaped by who we are as parents. And that means oftentimes we burden our children with our own unfulfilled dreams, our desires for them to be perfect even when we're not. And I wanted to challenge people on the idea that, our children are our own, because the reality is once they're birthed into this world, they are a part of the world and they'll have an impact on the world, whether it's positive or negative. And so it's just important for parents to understand how integral it is for a child's development for us to detach our egos. So that was kind of like to set the tone for how I thought about these stories that I wanted to tell.
And trust me, man, you set the tone with that one. And as I was going through it and engaging more with your letters and relationships of parenthood, specifically with your father, you attribute a lot of the power of your transformation to the exchange of letters. It was through this exchange with your father, amongst others, that you learned to unpack the challenges of fatherhood, what it means to be both a son and man, and the difficulties and joys of being Black in America. You describe letters as one of the most intimate forms of communication that serves almost as an introduction of what it means to be passionate, to love, and to dream. What would you say is the most powerful letter that you have received?
I would say the most powerful letter I ever received came from my oldest son, Jay, who I write about and who I write to in this particular book. And it was at a time when I was in solitary confinement. I spent a total of 19 years in prison. 7 of those years was in solitary. And my son wrote me this letter, and he told me that his mom had told him why I was in prison. And getting that letter from my son, laying out what his mother had shared with me, was kind of like that final domino in life of transformation, that final transformative domino that needed to fall for me to really make up my mind about what I wanted to do with my life. And that letter was powerful. And and I've been really fortunate to be the recipient of just some beautiful, thoughtful, life-shifting letters. The letter from the woman who raised the man whose life I'm responsible for taking. Her name is Nancy. And she wrote me this powerful letter of forgiveness that was one of those sparks of transformation that really, shifted how I thought about life, how I thought about myself. It really helped me to have empathy and compassion for all aspects of who I am. And, it's one of the things that I call one of my 3 big miracles. And then, of course, the letters from my dad, which is illustrated in terms of my appreciation by the cover, because when you look at the cover of the book, those are actually from my dad's letters. And I wanted to honor him and honor our experience. And, the great thing is we're talking about this particular book during Black History Month, because when you think about, the contributions of so many notable, iconic, ancestral leaders, a lot of their thoughts were conveyed through letters. And so to be able to continue that journey as a writer really is a great way to honor the legacy of those brilliant writers.
Amazing. And it's when I was going through your letters, specifically to Jay, your elder son, you described the privilege of being a parent. You've already alluded it to at the outset of this conversation. Yeah. Taking ownership of being a parent, the impacts it has, the responsibilities that come with it, how they're so profound. And what struck me was your ability to confront yourself so boldly and call yourself a fraud for not wearing the mantle of a parent to Jay with due care. What would you say to parents in this call who feel the same, who in the midst of the pandemic are forced to wear multiple hats and care for children while under the pressures of parenthood?
Yeah, I really think it's important for parents to give themselves grace, first of all. There's an old saying that children don't come with a manual. And while that's, been true for many years, I do think this book serves as somewhat of a manual of understanding the tremendous responsibility of parenthood in general and fatherhood specifically. And I think it just requires us to be honest with what our core needs were when we were children. What I learned from writing this book of letters to my sons was that I was also speaking to the son of me and realizing that as a son, I've had, judgments for my dad based on, experiences I hadn't yet had as a father. And so now, as I'm able to parent, I really began to understand my father and what he thought was his most important role, which was to be a protector and a provider. And I wanted to dispel some of those myths and really help people see that beyond the cloak of provision and protection, there are many other elements of fatherhood that are equally important, if not more so. And one of the things I discovered on this journey, that the greatest gift and the greatest responsibility I have, specifically to my younger son, Sekou, is to ensure that he has full, unfettered access to all of his emotions. And so that's what, really inspired the intimacy of the letter writing, because I really want my sons to see all of who I am and not just the neat kind of button up moments that we're typically think of when we think of fatherhood.
And the segue of Sekou is perfect because you shower your love on Sekou so openly. And your second letter, Love is Unconditional, is my favorite in the book because of how your love oozes for him transparently and truly, that it really left me like lost for words. And for those that don't know, Shaka, correct me if I'm wrong, Sekou means one who's wise and educated, right? And the naming of your second son, like your second book, like the second letter in your second book, is so thoughtful. From the outside looking in, it almost felt like a rebirth, a repurpose, a second run at parenthood to raise your son wise and educated in the lessons and experiences that you had with Jay, right? What have you learned from Sekou in your journey?
That's a great question. I remember having a conversation with my dad a few years ago. And one of the things that my dad said to me that really stuck with me is that our children are sent here to teach us lessons, not for us to teach them. And initially I was like, what is he talking about? That's our sole responsibility as parents, is to be a teacher. But what I really understood about from what my dad said was that, you're constantly learning from your children. You learn your strengths, you learn your weaknesses. You really learn where you at on the scale of emotional development, because parenting, as any parents on this call will attest to, is not always neat, shiny, and buckled up. But what I really learned from Sekou is that the more I detach my ego to outcomes, the better life will be for him as well as myself. And that as a parent, it's really important to honor our role in parenthood and not just see ourselves through this lens of provision, but also to see ourselves as whole human beings who ache when our children ache, who, sob when they're sad, who, get extremely excited and ridiculously animated when our children accomplish a thing, and, even in this webinar right now, Sekou just got hurt at school and his mom just texted me. So, I'm fortunate to have a co-parent who I know will handle things until I'm done. But, as soon as I got that call, the dad and me want to rush out the door and make sure he's okay. But, the father in me also knows that he's been equipped emotionally to navigate any adversity he faces, and that I do have a co-parent that's going to step up until I'm able to get there. So, those are those lessons that you learn constantly with children. Your day can be going as perfectly planned as possible when something happens, and be it good or bad, and it completely shifts your focus as a parent and forces you to think differently about your role in their lives. And so I'm constantly learning from this incredible little human being.
It's amazing. He inspires me. I see him beatboxing, singing, dancing, showcasing his personality. And I can see that he is indeed your son. And my favorite quote from this entire book actually comes from that letter, where you say, "From the second you appeared in my life, the world had a different hue." Listen, man, you made me question my existence as a poet. I love that line. And it's so funny because just last week, my mom came to me privately and she asked, Hamoud, do you ever think about marriage? Because you don't talk about it at all. Well, now, Mom, because I know you're watching upstairs, I can assure you that after reading this letter, this eligible bachelor is ready to have his own Pen Moodz running around. I can hear her laughing too. So now that we're relaxed, Shaka, I hope we're comfortable, we have this space, I would like to kind of take the conversation down a more serious road and remind everyone why we're having these conversations with brilliant minds like you. It was only 2 years ago that George Floyd was executed in front of the world in Minneapolis, that Breonna Taylor was murdered in her apartment due to a no-knock warrant. I wonder if everybody on this call knows that just last week, Amar Locke was murdered in his apartment by Minneapolis police under, like Breonna Taylor, a no-knock warrant. Shaka, in your book, you say that you're fed up with people asking how you're going to protect your son if confronted by the police, as there's nothing that you can do to protect him, as we continue to see. But on the flip side, you challenge him, and you challenge us sons as society in recognizing that this right here, what we're doing today, is our moment to exercise a higher way of seeing and believing in the best of us. And that resistance looks different to everyone. So now, Shaka, as the diversity, equality, and inclusion head at Trip Actions, what does resistance look like for a tech executive and for the leaders listening on this call?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I'm really fortunate to work at a company who thinks of diversity, equality, inclusion as integral to the success of the company and really how you build a healthy company culture. And what resistance looks like within a workforce is recognize that there are narratives that oftentimes just aren't true. Oftentimes we hear in companies, you know, these conversations are really difficult. And what I propose at our company is that the conversations really aren't that difficult. The conversations just have to be honest. And so the resistance to old narrative that kind of boxes us into the idea that we can only do diversity one way is something I'm constantly fighting against. You know, I have a very intentional strategy. I have a very intentional approach, you know, and that means being very proximate to things that we care about, people that we care about, causes that we care about. I think social impact work, you know, from a corporate standpoint is really important. And I think it really speaks to who the people that work at the company are. I cannot tell you how easy it is to get my team to step up and volunteer for any cause, because that's truly who they are as people. And we're intentional about recruiting people with that mindset. Now, that aside, it doesn't mean that it doesn't require tons of work, tons of conversations, because when it comes to recruitment, it can be very difficult to overcome the narrative around what exists in Silicon Valley as a good old boys club, the modern version. And so that can be off-putting to a lot of people. And so we're constantly thinking of what are the stories that we aren't telling or aren't being told from a company perspective, and how do we ensure that the messaging is clear, not only inside the company, but externally, so that people will want to come work for us. We're an incredible company, we're doing great work. And, you know, we have a long way to go with building out the department, but it really starts with those honest conversations. And so resisting old narratives doesn't mean that you ignore them. It just means that you don't buy into them as the only way that a story is to be told. And because if you do, you limit your success, right? You can't grow beyond what someone else's limited imagination has set forth for you. And so for me as a tech exec, it's really important to keep the conversation, first of all, front of mind for our leadership. You know, we have an incredible CEO, Ariel, who he and I just have beautiful conversations, and they're honest. And, you know, we agree, we disagree, we work through it. But what I admire about him and what I respect is that our conversations always start with honesty. And so I think that being able to help, you know, resist those narratives that boxes us in is really important in my work at Trip Actions.
I love that. I love that, especially how you discuss, you know, keeping things honest. You know, I was just listening to my dad have a conversation with one of his colleagues, and he said, diversity does not only exist in ethnicity, you know, diversity exists in thought and communication. So we must continue to challenge each other in thought to break down old narratives so we can continue to push forward as a collective and society, as you said. And what I love most about your letters and the conversation that we're having now is that you do not sanitize your conversations with the collective society, nor with your sons. You're clear in explaining that we live within inherently racist systems. And the only way to combat such systems and acts of aggression, as Drake would say, because we're in Toronto, is to know yourself, right?
Yeah.
And through self-affirmations and exercises of mindfulness. Because beneath it all, the world continues to paint Black communities as monolithic. We're either rappers or sports stars. From my own personal experience, when people find out that I'm a lawyer, I can see the surprise in their faces, you know, the raised eyebrows, to then which they assume further, are you a criminal lawyer? Right? And when in fact, I'm legal counsel for a publicly listed company in the tech space that employs 1,800 people across Canada, the United States, who perform for the Prime Minister Trudeau, President of the Raptors, you know, the list goes on and on. So when I step outside my house, I know who I am. I know myself. So to the world, I say 5 words: come correct and respect me, right? So you've come up with very ingenious ways to empower your son through affirmations. Can you tell us how you help him navigate the world as a strong, intelligent Black man?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and you know, the way that I actually help him navigate the world is recognize that he's actually a Black boy, and that Black boys are deserving of joy, and they're deserving of happiness, and they're deserving of their innocence that doesn't force them into adulthood before they're ready for the responsibility that comes with that. However, with that in mind, there's a great responsibility of affirming who he is, because the current narratives are, you know, misaligned with what I know him to be as a human being. And what I mean by misaligned is that there's this story that, you know, we have to constantly change the narrative around Black men and Black boys. And I don't believe that to be true. I don't think it's important for us to change the narrative. What I do think is important is for us to expand the narrative to include all of who we are. Because some of the things that are said are factually true, even though they have their systemic roots in racism and systemic, you know, marginalization. Some of the things are factually true, right? But there's also the omission of the truth, which is, you know, equally harmful and devastating as it has been when it comes to, you know, breaking down who we truly are. And so my goal is to expand his narrative to include all of who we are. And that starts every night with affirming him as being, you know, smart and funny and charming and intelligent and having beautiful brown skin and beautiful locks. And, you know, that affirmation started very early on because I knew that the narratives outside of our household would be very limiting and very boxed into somebody else's idea, and tropes that statistically aren't always true, and these narrowing views of us that's oftentimes only articulated through the negative traits that have shown up. And one of the people I've learned this from is a man named Travian Shorter. He's the founder of an org called Be Me Community. And he talks about the importance of asset framing and how, you know, no one else in the world is judged by the least of their moments, with the exception of, you know, primarily Black males. And, you know, if you think about that, we hear the narrative 1 in 4 Black men will end up incarcerated. And is that the truth? It's possible that that data is accurate, right? But what it doesn't mention is that the 3 out of 4 won't end up in prison and may go on to live incredibly bountiful, beautiful, impactful lives. And so it's equally important to talk about all 4 and not single out the one as if that one represents a monolithic expression of our existence, because it doesn't.
No, it certainly doesn't. And you are a living example of that, you know? You're now a father, you're a tech executive, an investor, you're a mentor of kids across the country. So with wearing all these different hats and accumulating all these different experiences, what advice would you say for those who have not inherited their careers and are walking their path in faith? And by that, I mean they didn't come from a family of lawyers like me, or doctors, or tech entrepreneurs. How can those individuals realize their dreams?
I mean, I think that's such a personal journey, right? I can share how I got to that space within my journey. And it really started with me reading a book called by James Allen, called As a Man Thinketh. And I was really fortunate to one of my first miracles was meeting some incredible mentors inside. These men serving life sentences, you know, some of them been in prison, you know, 30, 40 years at this point, and some of them have unfortunately passed. but they guided me to books, and they started off with Donald Goines, this gritty urban book, which led me to Malcolm X, which led me to like reading philosophy and world history. And I ended up reading this book, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And it talked about the power of our thoughts to attract into our lives the things that we think about the most. And initially I was like, this just can't be true, until I began to examine, after reading another book, Plato's Republic. I began to examine my life after reading Socrates' Apology. And I was like, wow, I thought that I would end up in prison because that's what I had been told since I was very young. And I saw how those negative thoughts magnetized some outcomes that led to me being incarcerated. And what I thought about is that if this can be true in the absolute negative, it has to be true in the positive. And so I began to think into existence things that I wanted to manifest in my life. First of all, I was getting out of solitary confinement and then getting out of prison. But I also began to write down what I wanted my life to be. And I believe there's an accountability that happens when you write something down. So I would encourage people on the call, like if you have a dream that you believe is big enough to fight for, then write it down. And it becomes like your GPS system. Like you'll know the steps you're taking are either leading you closer to it or further away from it. And so I literally lived my life through that lens of like, I didn't come from any of the things of I didn't come from tech execs, wealth. I came out of prison with this vision to just show up in the world and to be curious. My curiosity led me down the path of technology, and my willingness to overcome fear and overcome negative that says that they don't want you there. Like being able to step into the courage of the moment and say, you know what? I don't know how I'm gonna do here, but I'm up for the challenge of venturing off into this world and seeing what I can contribute. And that was really important for me to show up as a contributor, not as a recipient of somebody's grace, but really as a contributor in a meaningful way. And so, contribute where you can and make sure that contribution is leading you toward your goals and outcomes that you desire for yourself.
Amazing. I love the fact that you raised the importance of mentorship. One of my mentors bestowed upon me the importance of not having one, but like, as you said, multiple mentors. She described that everyone should treat themselves like a business and have their own board of directors, each with their own unique skill sets for you to lean on. Over the course of your journey, you've built your own board, which you describe in your book as a community amongst countless people aligned in your mission. From Joy Ito to Professor Lucas to Van Jones, who featured last year on the BlackNorth series, Jessica Jackson, the Horowitz family, and the man you kept missing by moments until the moment presented itself in 2017. Can you tell us about that moment and what led to it for people who don't know?
Yeah, I was fortunate to meet President Obama actually on a couple of occasions. And, I'm personally like, so I'm not like a super political guy. I vote, on the issues that I care about, that matter to me, that I believe in, but I don't have any emotional investment in like politicians or the world of their work. I'm not checking the news every day to see what crazy, absurd thing they've said, because that's just not my personality. I'm more on the ground. I'm more with the grits, the grittiness of being on the ground with the people. Yes. But there was something special about President Obama, no matter what your politics are, in terms of how he navigated the world as a human being. And for him to be that audacious and bold to say that I'm going to be the president of a country that historically had not even considered, in a real way, a Black president, like that just spoke volumes about his character and about his willingness to overcome narratives that I'm sure told him that he could never be president. And so meeting him was something that, just was really impactful in the ways of like, wow, this is a tangible human being who did the impossible. And I love those stories. I find most of them in sports. I'm a big sports fan. So stories of living your dream, overcoming adversity, strategically aligning yourself for success, like those stories just really fired me up. And so being able to meet him on 2 different occasions was just an incredible experience that, shifted, how I thought about, these moments of great aspiration. And so it was this thankful moment that I was able to share. And being able to share that with my son it's cool because I remember my dad being, you know, like, you can be anything in the world, including the president.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, Dad, they just killed, you know, Martin Luther King, like right before I was born, and Malcolm X. So that doesn't sound convincing to me, but to be able to share that with my sons was just a great experience.
Even from somebody who shares the border over here in Canada, you know, Obama's message of hope inspired so many. And even me, to the point where I went so far to change my Facebook name to Hamoud Mubarak Obama, right? Playing on my last name. As we're like nearing the end of this conversation, Shaka, is there anything that's left on your heart that you would like to share? Or do you have a parting message for people to carry forward, whether parents or children? Like, what is that one last piece that we can integrate in our lives to live more mindfully?
You know, my parting message, you know, is really centers around the importance of Black History Month as human history experience, as a human history experience. You know, oftentimes when a conversation around Black History Month comes up, you know, some of our human counterparts shudder at the thought of us just celebrating us. And they think that it's only rooted in the less than stellar moments within our history. But really what this moment is an invitation. This month is an invitation to learn the many different ways we've contributed in the world, and the many ways that we still contribute, you know, in our day-to-day lives, and to offer some insights into history that has been glossed over, hidden, and oftentimes just stolen. So what I would say is that, you know, as parents, you know, no matter what your ethnicity is, no matter what your race is, you know, take this opportunity to dive in, to learn something new, to be curious, to be awakened in a way that brings us together around human values, and recognize that our Black is beautiful, our Black is here to stay, is dope. You know, we've been able to create magic in the world, and anytime you're proximate to it, you can't help but experience the rubbing off of that magic. So treat yourself to the beautiful Blackness of Black History Month.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think this was such an incredible dialogue. And just to piggyback on that final point, you know, like you're raising Sekou for the future. And I also wanted to make it imperative to everybody listening that as much as this is Black History Month, this is also Black Future Month. We must look towards the future and how we're going to build for those next generations that come after us. So Shaka, I would like to thank you for 3 things specifically. 1, for inspiring me as an artist and a person to be more vulnerable in my work, in my relations, as it creates for more authentic dialogue as we've had today. 2, for reinvigorating the reader in me. I used to be a voracious reader and devouring books at every single opportunity, but that side of me seemed to slip away for whatever reason during the pandemic. But when I picked up this book, Letters to Sons of Society, I couldn't put it down. And it's actually the first book I completed in 2022. So mad love. And finally, for humanizing heroism. And I'll take it one step further, superheroism. Because by that, I mean, we are realizing that heroes not only exist in comic books or movie screens, but are the people looking back at us in the mirror every single morning. We are and should be heroes for ourselves, our sons, daughters, mothers, and fathers of society. So before I pass it off to Dahabo, I'd like to finish this off with an excerpt of your book that embodies the beauty, the magic of the Black community in this month and every month going forward. And if I get emotional, it's all your fault, Shaka.
Oh, good.
So it goes like this. In 400 years, we have grown from the wastelands of slavery to a mountainside, a high point where we can either keep climbing or no. There's no going back. We're going to climb. You and me and all of us. We are going to stay fully present in our Blackness amid the threats and accusations and suspicions. We are going to be the magic, and we are going to recognize the magic in one another, because when we do so, well, there's nothing more beautiful. Shaka, from the bottom of my heart, man, I don't want to cry, so Dahabo, just take it, man. Finish this thing.
Look, thank you, Hamoud, and thank you, Shaka. I've been sitting here listening to the both of you, and I promise you every moment I had jitters just thinking about just the life experiences and the capacities that you both own, and particularly Shaka, and the life that you've lived, and how you continue to exercise humility and grace and empathy and cultural intelligence and all these amazing things that make up who you are as a Black man. And so thank you for being who you are, for taking part in this session with us. You know, we at BlackNorth are saying to ourselves that the fabric of who we are as people is so grand and it's so great and it's beyond measure. No one can limit us, and we should not limit ourselves. And so as we go through this work, and you know, our theme this year is very much around past, present, and future. And so there's a moment of pause, I think, that we need to take during this month and every day throughout the year to recognize what Black contribution looks like, because it looks like me, it looks like Hamud, it looks like Shaka, it looks like members of my team, it looks like our leadership body, like West Hall and others. We are the fabric of this community, and we make up you know, the majority of what success looks like. You know, I think when we talk about Black excellence and we talk about what it means to be part of this community and to be a contributor to that, there's a beauty to our community. And I want us to continue to revel in that and stay in that and celebrate that and be who we are every day of the week, because Black is beautiful. And so look, I wanted to warmly thank you for taking part in the session. It meant a lot for us to be enlightened, to hear about your struggles, but you know, the admiration that we have for you, I think, is greater than what we can say in words. And so thank you again, Shaka. And thank you, Hamud, for hosting us.
Okay. Thank you all so much for having me.
Look, I wish I could see everyone who's logged in, because I'm feeling all sorts of things right now. I think there's a part of the work that we do that continues to be incredible. You know what? I'm going to pause, because what I see is our leader and fearless leader, Wes Hall, who's popped in here, and I want to pop him in.
Shaka, you did a fantastic job, and what an inspiration. I have to hear the full story at one point, but I got to get the book. I got to go buy the book and take a look at it.
Yeah.
And enjoy that, because I'm telling you, that was a powerful piece, and I'm glad I was able to be here to take it in, and it was so inspirational.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining, and truly an honor to be here. Can't wait for you to check the book out. It's actually 2 books. This is just the newest one, and the first one really walks through my experience from growing up in the streets to ending up to prison and coming out. And this one is just, you know, life after all those things and how I see everything that's happening socially. So truly honored, and definitely want to stay connected to your team and your work. I think what you all are doing is amazing. It's really inspiring. And, you know, I can't, unfortunately, because of my felony, I'm not allowed to travel to Canada. I can go everywhere else, but I can't travel there. And little, you know, unknown fact, the reason my TED Talk is on that background is because I couldn't go to, it was the first year that TED moved to Vancouver. And so I couldn't travel to Canada at the time. So we streamed it live from New York. But, you know, I can definitely come to St. Lucia though. So
we will welcome you with open arms down here, my brother. We're waiting for you.
I'm definitely coming. Sure.
That's good.
Well, my son Lily got injured at school, so I need to go make sure he's fine. And were we doing any Q&A? I don't want to leave before.
No, Shaka, we are at the end. Thank you for coming on board, and please take care of your son.
Yes,
yeah, thank y'all so much.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Pen Moodz, thank you for being a part of this, my friend.
I know, it's an honor and a pleasure.
Yeah, it was. It's amazing. It's not too long ago that before you start doing the spoken words, and said, "Listen, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to do this." And look at you now. You're straddling 2 worlds.
Yes. And
you're doing it very, very successfully. And it just goes to show that everybody knows my story, that I'm a Bay Street guy, and now I'm on Dragon's Den, something that I'm not used to television or anything. Let me take these shades off. Wow, it's too sunny. But at the end of the day, it just goes to show that we have hidden talents within us, right? And we don't have to just take one path. we can exercise and do different things that kind of, you know, make us happy and make us feel good. And, you know, so you can put that pinstripe suit on and go down to your law practice and, you know, in your offices, and you can let the dreadlocks flow, and then you can start to speak your spoken words, and nothing wrong with that. So continue to do what you do. I really appreciate everyone that participated and joined us, the sponsors, and, you know, let's keep the conversation going this month.
Amazing. Will do. Thank you all again for the opportunity. It's been a phenomenal year. It's going to be exciting developments happening for the remainder of 2022 for both the BlackNorth and Pen Moodz. So on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for participating and listening. And I look forward to the next talk.
Thank you. Thank you both. Look, I'll take the opportunity now. I know Wes mentioned our incredible sponsors who continue to support us every year, continue to be part of the fabric of BlackNorth. And so thank you to TELUS Communications and Enbridge for your generous gift. We are thrilled to have your support within this organization as we continue to eradicate anti-Black racism from our society. And look, we have incredible programs that we're building, intergenerational, for our Black community, and we continue to sustain our mission and in the hopes to make a difference. And so we thank all of you for participating. This is our chapter 1. Chapter 2 is coming up on February 17th. And we're going to have Topeka Sam, who created the Ladies of Hope Ministries, an organization whose mission is to help disfranchised and marginalized women transitioning back into society through education, entrepreneurship, spiritual empowerment, and advocacy. She's worked with Vanny Sykes, and Topeka has developed a vision for Hope House, which is an opportunity for women who have been incarcerated to come back into society and continue their journey in their lives. And so it's an exciting session for us as well. Please don't forget to register. You can go on blacknorth.ca at our events tab, and you'll be able to register for that event. But again, thank you so much for participating, and please, happy Black History Month.